Greetings from Mesa United Methodist Church of Albuquerque, New Mexico. We hope this message will be meaningful and relevant to your life and your relationship with God. We are located at the corner of Taylor Ranch and Montana Road, and we invite you to join us for worship every Sunday. Our traditional service is at 8:30 a.m., and our contemporary worship is at 11 a.m. More information may be found at our website, mesaviewumc.com. To honor all copyright restrictions, we have removed some audio and video footage from this message. Now may you be blessed through the reading and hearing of God's holy word.
Our gospel reading this morning is Luke 10:38 through 42. Now as they went on their way, Jesus entered a certain village, where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. So she came to him and asked, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Then tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her."
Today we continue in our series in the Gospel in Pixar, looking at the movie Cars. Cars tells the story of Lightning McQueen, whom we just saw, a race car who is trying to win the Piston Cup in his rookie year. In the last race of the season, which is about to begin there, McQueen has a huge lead on the last lap over his two chief rivals, Strip Weathers, also known as the King, who's in his last season, and Chick Hicks, the racer who is in perpetual second place. And as he's rounding the last corner, he blows two of his tires, allowing the other cars to catch up to him. And he blows those tires because he's fired three of his crew chiefs that season and doesn't listen to the rest of the team who are there, and so is desperately trying to make his way to the finish line to win the race. The other two cars catch up, and it's a dead tie. Now, he's fired his crew chiefs, and he ends up having the rest of his team quit because he says that it's a one-man show. He wants it all to be about him. But it's decided that there's going to be another final race with just the three cars who are tied the next week in California, winner take all. And on the way to California, Lightning accidentally comes out of the truck that he's riding in. And in his confusion, he ends up in a small town, Radiator Springs, which is the cutest little town in Carburetor County on Route 66. But he's racing through the town trying to get back to Mac, his truck, and he ends up tearing up Main Street. He's arrested and sentenced to pave the road before he'll be allowed to go on. While in the town, he encounters some strange collection of characters who live there, including another Piston Cup driver who is in sort of he's a recluse living in this town. No one else knows who he is. Up to this point, McQueen has seen racing and his life as a zero-sum game. That is, there are winners and there are losers. As he says, there's one winner, 42 losers. Losers not only in the race, but also losers in the game of life. That if you are not in the top position, then you are nothing. Now, there are some things in life that are races. But most of the things that we think are races are not really races. We turn them into races, trying to make them zero-sum games, in which the purpose is to win. And we often confuse winners in races with being winners in life. Those two things don't always correspond. We also then use the justification of wanting to be a winner to justify whatever means it takes to get there. So we cheat, literally and figuratively, everyone, including ourselves, to be that winner in life. And so what lightning has to do is to come to the realization that that's what he's doing with his own life. Equating I won the race with I am a winner. And he realizes eventually that how he's treated everyone else in his life is the way that some people treat him, as a means to an end. And he also has to come to realize that life is not a race. As Seth Godin has said, when we're in a race in which there's a zero-sum game, one winner, many losers, the point is to win. You're not supposed to enjoy the ride. You're not supposed to learn anything. You're not supposed to make anyone or anything else better along the way, to make your community better. You're not supposed to slow down and smell the roses, as it were. And so lightning is in that race, rushing through life, and life is rushing by him. And he's never getting to take the time to stop until he's forced to stop. And this becomes very clear to him when he has an afternoon off, when he's not paving the road. And he and Sally, who owns the local motel in this town, the Cozy Cone, takes him for a drive. Now, this is the one area of the movie which I disagree. Because what seems to say that it was the creation of the interstate highway system that moved everybody forward fast, when in fact there was lots of people who were wanting to move fast that pushed for the creation of the interstate highway system. It's sort of a chicken and egg situation. People wanted to go faster, and so we created the interstate highway system, and so people could go faster, and lots more people went fast. It's sort of like FedEx. They didn't create the demand for people needing to have things absolutely positively someplace overnight. There was that demand, and so Fred Smith saw that demand and took his meager $30 million inheritance and started a $1 billion company. And so now lots of people are able to speed up their deadlines because they have the ability to get something there overnight. Which comes first? They feed off of each other. And they do so in our lives as well. We wonder, how did we ever live without the internet, or without smartphones, or maybe cars and indoor plumbing? And while we may curse their existence, except for the indoor plumbing thing, we also know that we can't live without them. We're reluctant to give them up when we have to. We want them, and yet we don't want them at the same time. They speed us up, which we enjoy, but we regret the fact that they speed up everything for us. They never allow us to have that down time anymore. We know we should take time off, but we don't do it. And so, like lightning, we want to go and go and go to win that race, and we can do it for a while, but we're eventually going to blow out our tires like lightning, or more likely, we're just going to run out of gas. Which those who watch racing know happens a lot more at the end of races than you would think actually would happen. And Scripture has something to say to us about that. Now, there are two reasons given in Scripture why we are to practice Sabbath, to take a day off, a day of rest. What are the two reasons given in Scripture to have Sabbath?
Worship God.
To worship God? No, actually that is not one of them. To rest. Why? Because God rested on the seventh day. God rested after creation.
Renew your spirit.
No? Well, it is to be renewer. That we talked about that a little while ago. One other reason. Because you were slaves in Egypt, God says, and somebody else controlled your schedule, and you didn't have any say over what you were going to do on any day, and you had to work all the time. Because you were a slave in Egypt, you should take a day off now that you're free. You should take a day off because God rested on the seventh day. Created in 6 days, rested on the seventh day. Now that's a little bit different than what we normally think about why we have a day of rest, which is because it's supposed to be the day that we worship. That's a later development that comes into it. Nearly all the references we find in Scripture about Sabbath are about God resting and because we were slaves. Now, that does not mean that worship is not important to do on the day of rest. And it became important first because you had a day off. You might not have the time during the rest of the week to worship. And so it was a day that you could come together with other people in order to give praise to God. And it also allowed us then to celebrate in the creation of the world and having this day off, a day without labor. And so we could celebrate with God just like He did in creating the world. And so we could worship into that creation and live and move and have our being with God. Now the other piece that we should know is that we don't actually worship on the Sabbath. What is the Sabbath day? Saturday. The church intentionally moved the day of worship, the day of rest, off of the Sabbath to the first day of the week, because it's the day of resurrection. There's lots of reasons why the church made them, some good theological arguments. We don't have time to go into them. But one of them was, it's the day that new life came into our lives through the resurrection of Jesus, why we sometimes call Sunday the Lord's Day. One of the other things it did is it freed many of the laws that had arisen about what you could and could not do on Sabbath. It freed them. They got rid of them when we moved our day of rest to the first day of the week, to Sunday. And what's one of the things that Jesus gets in trouble for a lot? Violating the Sabbath. And so he has to tell the people, his critics, he has to tell us that we were not made for the Sabbath. The Sabbath was made for us. So all those rules, the things that you can't do, people sort of jumping on you, being judgmental, that's what we heard in that epistle reading this morning. Was people are going to criticize you about lots of things, including how you recognize the Sabbath, how you're taking the break. And so when we say that we are going to take a Sabbath, a break, a day of rest, we're going to stop working. What we say is that we're going to have control over our time. Because time is a zero-sum game. There's only 24 hours in a day. You can't, no matter how much you'd like it to be more, you can't add more time to your day. So what we do with our time and how we use it says everything about what we consider is important. Now, Stephen Covey used to talk about that one of the 7 habits of highly effective people was to put first things first. And so he would give this demonstration. These little rocks represent all the things that sort of eat up our time throughout the day. Not things we necessarily have planned. Some of these things are important, some of them not. But they just sort of suck. You go, where did the time go? These are the things that make you say, where did the time go? And the bigger rocks are the things that we say that are important in our lives, but we don't really make time for. And so these things represent family, learning. You know, if you want to try a different occupation or get better, what it is that you do, whatever it is, vacation, taking time off. We keep adding these things in, and they don't actually fit in there, do they? Because those little things eat up all of our time. And how we spend our time says where our importance is. And so what Stephen Covey says is that rather than trying to throw these important things in at the last, you schedule these at the first. And you put them into your jar. And you say, these are the most important things in my life. And then everything else can go in around it. They don't fit when you're trying to get the big things in with the little things. But when you say, these are the important things, those are the things I'm going to worry about and focus on, and everything else goes with it. And I mean, I can say, when I get into the office, the first thing that I want to do is begin my day in prayer and do scripture reading, and invariably, what do? I check my email. And pretty soon the end of my day has come, and guess what I haven't done? Bible reading and prayer. Because all those little rocks have sucked up my time. So rather than saying on my schedule, I'm going to do this, and I'm just going to block it out, And I don't do anything else until those things are done. Now, the one thing I would disagree with Cubby on this is that the purpose is not to then keep filling this up with all those little things. It's also to get rid of some of those little things. To say they're neither urgent nor important. And therefore, I'm not going to do them. I'm not going to focus on them anymore. That's what Jesus is saying to Martha in that passage we heard there. He says, you're distracted by many different things. You're pulled in 1,000 different directions. And this happens in retirement too. I know, I hear from you. It's not just for people who are working. You're pulled in 1,000 different directions. You're distracted by lots of other things, other than the things that are important. And so he says to Martha, it's not that you're doing things. Doing things is not bad. We sometimes want to make this is, oh, I'm a Martha, I always want to do things, and that's a bad thing. That's not what Jesus is saying. Doing things is important. But what is the priority of the things that we're doing, and why are we doing those things? He's saying right now the important thing, I'm not going to be here forever. So Mary, she's chosen the right path because she's focusing on the right things for right now. Do our schedules own us, or do we own our schedules? That's why God says, you were slaves in Israel, in Egypt. Israelites were slaves in Egypt, that's what I'm trying to say. You didn't control your schedule. Now that you're free, you do, so you get to choose. But we act sometimes like our schedules control us. That we're slaves to what our schedules say. And they dominate what goes on in our life. So it's not just on a day of Sabbath, a day of rest, taking back that time. It's about deciding what's important in our lives. Because if we're going to say that we're going to set one day aside, let alone just say one hour aside for God, we're saying for that moment, God is our priority. And everything else takes a back seat. That's what Lightning has to realize in his life, and what his time in Radiator Spring teaches him, is that his time away from everything shows him that everything that he thought was important really wasn't all that important. That those things that he thought mattered the most, being a winner, winning the Piston Cup, really didn't matter. And that idea actually comes from Lightning's creator, John Lasseter, who's the creative director for Pixar. And Lasseter had been working really hard, long hours for a number of years on Toy Story, then A Bug's Life, and then Toy Story 2. And his wife, Nancy, reminded him the importance of spending time with his family. I'm sure you know those people, they say, my family's the most important thing. And where do they spend most of their time? At work. My family is the most important thing, even though I never spend any time with them. Where we spend our time shows what our priorities are. And so, John's wife, Nancy, said, be careful, because one day you're going to wake up and the boys will have gone off to college, and you will have missed it. And so after he completed Toy Story 2, he took the entire summer off, and he and his family took an RV trip down old Route 66. Led to the creation of a movie, which I hope then he wrote it all off because it led directly to his work. But he said, I reconnected with my family in a way I hadn't been able to do for a long time. Being on the road together with them, having this great adventure, driving the small highways and going where the wind blew us, made me realize the journey is the true reward. So Lightning McQueen comes to realize the same thing. And on the last lap of that last race, as he's prepared to win, he's in first place, he sees something happen and he does something that just a week before would have never occurred to him. McQueen discovers the thing that he desired, the thing that he'd been told all along that was most important, winning. It's actually not the most important thing. And so he gives up on all of his dreams, not just winning the Piston Cup, but also being Dynaco's new face. Because he realizes that the means don't justify the ends, which is what Chick is also finding out. That life is not a race. And that the things that matter the most is not being a winner, it's about the relationships. And those relationships are made possible because he's now going to take the time to make sure those are the priorities in his life. We have control over our lives, and life is not a race. The journey is the purpose, not the end. And we control what happens in our lives. So if we're stuck in that fast lane, thinking that that's the most important thing, we're missing the most important thing. That when we take time for rest, that when we learn that to recreate is literally to recreate, to take part in the creation with God, and focus on the things that are truly the most important in our lives, then we all become winners. I pray that it will be so, my brothers and sisters.